Hi, my name is Christina Zendarczyk. I'm with Chagrin River Watershed Partners. We're a local environmental nonprofit that works with the communities that drain to the Chagrin River. Pepper Pike is one of our member communities, and so we're assisting the city with developing a series of environmentally beneficial landscaping videos. These videos are designed so that landscapers such as yourself can get good information about how to be good stream stewards of the many streams that run through Pepper Pike. When you see streams like this, you may not necessarily think that that's going to be a big deal to potentially put material in or something like that, but I can assure you that these small streams have a much larger downstream impact on things like the Chagrin River and Lake Erie. The small decisions that you make up here can definitely affect larger decisions downstream and can cause some pretty serious flooding and erosion problems for the community. So this isn't just environmentally beneficial landscaping, this is also economically beneficial landscaping. Okay, so in this supplemental information, these are the main points we're going to be touching on: the best practices for streamside planting, native plants versus invasive plants, and also using landscaping for residential stormwater control, aka having landscaping that works for you instead of against you. So moving into streamside planting tips, the primary one is try to maintain the stream edge in a native buffer as much as you possibly can. We talked about this earlier, is that turf grass doesn't have a lot of deep stabilizing roots, so if you mow up to the edge of a stream, you're leaving that stream open to erosion. Plant it instead with deep-rooted native trees, shrubs, and grasses. Maintain it in as natural a state as possible. Not only is this in line with Pepper Pike's riparian setback ordinance, it's just a good idea in general. In terms of what types of trees and shrubs you would like to be putting along the stream bank, I always stress native Ohio species. Some very good trees for that are sycamore, river birch, red maple, pin oak, swamp oak, and black gum. These are trees that tend to establish pretty quickly. If they like where they're at, they'll grow very quickly, and they have deep roots that go very, very deep and lock in the soils. For shrubs, these establish even more rapidly than trees, so it's a good time to maybe put some shrubs in along with the trees. The shrubs will go in beforehand and help stabilize the soils while the trees establish. Native dogwoods, such as red osier dogwood, buttonbush, spicebush, pussy willow, and some of the other willow species, winterberry and sumac are great for that. Winterberry and sumac are excellent in particular because you can see that they provide good habitat also for local wildlife. And the red osier dogwood is personally one of my favorites because it has these beautiful red branches that provide year-round interest. You can also hedge them and trim them so that they can be as manicured or as wild and woolly as you want them to be. So depending on what your client would like, you can tailor these to their preferences. If you're curious about more lists of plants that are suitable for stream bank planting, we have those available on our website, and I've put the link here. So we think about this in terms of not mowing to the edge, and you're preventing erosion and stream bank loss with these native plant buffers. I have an example here. The top photo on the right is a before shot of some stream erosion that we saw last year on a residential property. And then the one below it is sort of a composite image of what that could look like if it's been stabilized with a vegetative buffer. It looks pretty straightforward, and it actually looks quite nice, I think. And you can have that planted with some beautiful flowers and small shrubs and things like that. They don't need to be very tall because the roots are the stuff doing all the work. So as long as you have nice, deep, native-rooted plants and species in there, you're going to do just fine. The one on the left is an example of an existing riparian buffer. It's not very wide. It doesn't really have to be in a lot of these smaller streams. And that actually also acts as a geese deterrent. So geese don't like to walk through anything that's about at their breast height. So that's one thing that folks who have small ponds and waterways on their area use as a very good, effective natural geese deterrent. So when I talk about invasive versus native species, what is the difference? Well, native plants are plants that were basically in our area before we showed up. That's kind of the general term. Invasive plants are these non-native species that Europeans took over with them or other people took over with them and then planted here. They may feel native to you, like you may see these around a lot, but they aren't, and they often outcompete existing native vegetation at a lot of damages and loss to the U.S. economy. You can see over $123 billion per year in damages caused by invasive species. So this is a very large problem, and I've listed just the common invasive species. These are things that a lot of folks still buy in garden centers and plant. And so, being aware of these species, and they can actually take over and spread into natural areas and cause some pretty severe problems with the local ecology and habitat. We talked about a little bit of the benefits of native Ohio plants. Again, I said they have deep roots. They go down very deep, up to 8 feet deep in some cases, and that offers a lot of really great stream bank stabilization. They are locally resistant. They're resistant to local pests. You don't need to use pesticides as much with them. They also provide great habitat for local bees, butterflies, and birds. You might think that you have a beautiful landscaped yard with a lot of flowers and stuff like that, but local wildlife may look at that and think of it as a food desert. You've given them nothing to eat. It creates healthier soil conditions over time. As these deep roots penetrate through the soil, some of them die off and new roots are created. And so as these new roots spread out and the old roots die off, the soil improves itself in organic content, and you actually can have a healthier soil structure over time. Also, these deeper roots are much better at infiltrating water than turfgrass. Turfgrass roots don't go that deep, and these deep, deep roots provide many good channels for the water to go down and soak into the ground rather than sitting on top of your yard and creating a wet spot. So we've talked about some of the benefits of using native plants, and now we're going to sort of transition into ways you can use those native plants in residential backyards to help manage stormwater specifically on site. The basics on stormwater is that this is any kind of precipitation, rain or snow, that falls on the landscape. This includes runoff from all the impervious surface, impervious meaning, it's a hardscape. Water can't soak in, so your roofs, your driveways, sidewalks, etc., your streets. The thing about stormwater that I want to make very clear is that this is different than what's inside the house. So when you run a sink or you flush your toilet, that water goes somewhere else. It goes to a wastewater treatment plant and it's treated and cleaned and released back in to the waterways. And stormwater, though, goes straight to a storm drain, which does not flow to a treatment facility. It goes directly to an unprotected waterway. So residential stormwater management is extremely critical to water quality and flood control when you think about how many residential properties there are, and they're all draining to a storm drain. So you have to be very careful about your pesticides, your fertilizers, your herbicides, the things that you use, and also just the general debris, leaves, sticks, things like that. Don't watch how you blow your leaves around or where you put them, because if they get into a storm drain, they'll clog and cause backups and issues. So the stormwater runoff in these situations tends to collect in yards because it doesn't have a really good avenue to soak into the ground anymore without those deep roots that native plants can provide. It runs off into places, it creates wet spots and flooding problems and backups. It overwhelms existing storm drain systems, also creating backups and flooding, and any additional debris that's in that water will create clogs. But fortunately, stormwater management through beneficial landscaping can be addressed at the residential level. There's a series of tools that residents have available to them, and that you as landscapers can help have that conversation with them about ways they might be able to solve these issues in their yards. We're going to focus on rain gardens. We've already talked a little bit about native plants and some of these other aspects, but rain gardens are essentially a shallow landscaping that is designed to cup and hold water and soak it in temporarily. It doesn't stay in the rain garden. It doesn't create standing water issues. They're designed to drain, and they provide on-site stormwater control. So basically the idea is that this rain garden is a piece of useful functional landscaping that can actually look quite beautiful, that helps manage the stormwater on your yard before it flows to that wet spot and creates that wet, muddy spot that you can never mow. So this is a simple cross-section of your average rain garden. You can see that there's a downspout disconnection to the right and that the water flows out of the downspout, so it's controlling the water coming off the roof in this case. The water flows into the rain garden and sits there for a bit where it is infiltrated by the deep-rooted native plants therein. And it's a very simple concept. It's essentially just like a real, normal landscaping, but it performs this useful function. And rain gardens can look as different as you can imagine a rain garden to look. All of these are functioning, good rain gardens, and they all have a little bit of extra beauty to them that the resident requested. So, depending on how these things go, you can have it be as wild and woolly as you want or as manicured and clean as you desire. They tend to be very useful. They can absorb 30% more runoff than a conventional lawn. Like I said, turf grass is not really great for absorption, especially in older lawns, in older communities. They tend to be much more compacted. And when you have clay-based soils like what we have out here, that becomes compacted even more quickly, and the water tends to just pool on the surface. Maintenance of a rain garden is extremely similar to just standard landscaping, with a few exceptions. So we'll talk about that a little bit. When you're starting out thinking about a rain garden, you should do a basic drainage test, and that's very straightforward. Dig a hole about 1 foot deep and fill the hole with water and let it drain through completely because you want to saturate the soil around it. Then fill the hole again with water and time how long it takes for the water to drain. If the hole drains in 24 hours or less, then you're good for a rain garden. Otherwise, you may need to amend the soil to improve the drainage in that particular location. It doesn't mean you can't have a rain garden. It just means you might have to do a little bit of extra work there to get it to drain properly. So typically what we recommend is to look at your downspouts and disconnecting them and sending that drainage to the rain garden area. It provides a constant source of water. Whenever it rains, you know that garden will get fed. The plants, they are designed to enjoy both wet and dry conditions. We have lists of rain garden plants available. And the typical depth of a rain garden is only about 4 to 8 inches. You may need to amend the soil a little bit more, 2 inches or so, again, to improve the drainage. Once the rain garden is in, you just weed and water like normal landscaping to get the plants to establish. They do need time to establish, so yes, you do have to water a rain garden for the first year or so. Good rule of thumb with that is if the top 4 inches of the rain garden is dry, then you should probably water the plants. Otherwise, they tend to be just fine. Fertilization should not be necessary. Since a rain garden is designed to handle stormwater runoff, it tends to see a little bit more nutrient loading than your average system. So that should take care of it. And native plants tend to not require as much fertilization anyways. We also highly recommend using a shredded hardwood mulch, something a little bit heavier, something that won't float, because again, the garden is designed to fill with water. So you don't want your mulch floating away. And also, if you're going to be mowing around a rain garden, use a mulching blade. Or point your mower away from the garden. You don't want all of that stuff going into the garden, all the clippings and debris, because it'll block the water's ability to soak in. We have a really great online resource for rain gardens. It's technically the manual for homeowners, but landscapers can read it too. It's basically everything you would ever need to know about building and installing a rain garden, including plant lists in the back, what calculations you would need to size the rain garden to if you know how much drainage it's going to be taking. For example, off of so many square foot of roof, how big would the garden need to be to handle all of that? We have those calculations available in that manual, and we have it online at our website, and I've provided you the link there. That is the basis for the supplemental information. Again, if you have any questions about this stuff, we can help. We feel like a lot of residents may be asking about ways that they can improve the drainage on their property and ways they can maintain their stream corridors in a better way, and we hope that by doing this with you, you've learned some good information and consider us a resource for you as well. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you've come away with some very valuable information. And like I said before, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We work for the City of Pepper Pike on behalf of them, and we're more than willing to work with any residents, landowners that you may have as clients to answer any questions that they have about beneficial environmental landscaping.